I'd like to introduce this afternoon's keynote speaker, John Ellison, who's the source at ReFi DAO, to talk about Regenerate Earth. Over to you, John.
Hey, thanks so much. Appreciate the kind intro, Craig, and everyone else at the NCFA team doing amazing work. It's a real honor to be here today. I've had the great pleasure of giving this talk in a few startup cities around the world, and it's a great opportunity to share this to an online community. My co-founder is actually based in Toronto, so hopefully y'all can meet in person together. There's somebody doing regular meetups in Toronto around regeneration. What I'm going to talk about today is how new technologies and local startup communities can actually unlock a regenerative economy for all of our future. I'll lay out a little structure for our time together. I'm going to go very quickly, some background around me, and then I'm going to take us through a snapshot of our current paradigm on Earth. It'll get a little heavy at some points. I might actually play a little music in the background just because it helps me get into the flow of things. And then I'm going to introduce a new economic story, the story of what I call regeneration. And now I know the title of the event is REGEN, so it's probably familiar, but I'm going to go a layer deeper into some of the core values and beliefs that I think can unlock a prosperous future for everyone. We're then going to look at the tools and culture of what people call ReFi or regenerative finance. And then I'm going to lay out the vision for a new nation, effectively, that's founded on the principles of this new story. And then I'll provide an invitation for you and anyone here listening to come join us at one of our regular events. We have them in Lisbon, they're in Toronto, they're actually all over the world, and you can come in person and meet other people who are participating in this movement. So as Craig said, my name's John Ellison. I'm acting as source and founder of ReFi DAO. I've been working in startups for over 16 years now, have had a lot of failures and some success. I'm a very, very amateur angel impact investor and a terrible small holder. Tried living in community, planting trees, working with animals. It's lots of fun, but super hard work. I'm much better in the tech space and in the behavior side. I'm actually certified to teach Professor BJ Fogg's work out of the Stanford Behavior Design Lab. And I had the great pleasure of seeing the emergence of ReFi in 2021 and 2022 as an interim head of growth at Toucan Protocol that saw over 24 million tons of Veracarbon units come on chain as a result of the incentives provided by KlimaDAO. You can scan this QR code and connect with me. But shifting gears into the snapshot of our current paradigm, this is a few data points about life on Earth today. We've got over 8 billion people. A vast majority of the land has been depleted. Our topsoil is being degraded. Most of our fish in the ocean have been extracted. We're seeing, entire islands the size of, Texas floating on the ocean. We've killed most of life on Earth. Over 69% of biodiversity has been lost in just 40 years. And many people don't have access to clean water. But most importantly, we're reaching an atmospheric tipping point of carbon dioxide. And this is taking us to unprecedented times. I know it might sound a little bit exaggerative of me to say this, but the science is very clear. If you've read the recent IPCC report, our time is running out. And we have a very narrow window of opportunity to address these challenges in a meaningful way so that we can avoid catastrophic ecosystem collapse within our lifetime. But the reality is that the entire economic system that we've designed over the last 150 years optimizes for a single metric of gross domestic product. And this metric fails to account for what we actually need as humans to survive. Yes, it's the sum of all the goods and services with any given nation, but it doesn't account for how we as people relate to one another, our wellness, the access to fresh water, clean air, the stability of our climate, the vibrancy of our soil, and the nutrition in the food that it's producing. And it doesn't account for our sense of purpose and meaning, which we know the science shows very clearly we need to be well. And what we've created is a system where we've traded the pristine, beautiful nature for the convenience of single-use plastic. And look what it's doing to our bodies. We have microplastics in all of our bodies. We've traded telling stories around a campfire with being at home alone on our phones in isolation. And the reality is that we are not well. There's a mental health crisis in the US and North America, all around the world. People are experiencing anxiety and depression at an unprecedented rate at a very young age. And this is a result of this story, the story of separation, the invisible hand, this idea that we as people are separate from each other and from ourselves, from the nature around us. This is the guiding belief system of our current economy today. But it doesn't have to be this way. And I don't know about you, but I can tell in my body right now that my heart rate was just elevated. I can sense cortisol and adrenaline in my veins. This is stress. We are living the most volatile time in human history, and it's fucking terrifying. Our mammalian brains are panicking. But I would like to shift gears and invite a different neurochemistry, the chemistry of regeneration, which begins first and foremost with gratitude, with being thankful for what we have, and of having hope that we actually have everything that we need to solve these problems, and action, that we do the specific things that we can do in our power today with our businesses and our communities. And we celebrate the success of other people taking action in the world. So it's with this that I want to say thank you for taking this moment with me. I'm going to shift into the part 3 of this talk today. Yeah, we'll get back into things. So in essence, I see ReFi as a combination of these 3 disciplines: regenerative economics, how we can actually, design a system that helps people on the planet exist in harmony using money and the flow of value itself; decentralized finance, this open source software enabled by smart contracts and public blockchains that allows us to do what we do with banks and other financial services, but without any intermediaries. It's just software. And the third piece of decentralized science is actually something integral, because we need to know through the science of climate change where to deploy this capital using this open source software so that we can actually be sure that we're having the greatest impact that we could. And so another way to look at this is its publicly verifiable impact. It doesn't matter really what you're talking about, whether it's carbon markets or ESG goals or social justice. It's just being able to verify on a public ledger that, yes, the money you have deployed has gone towards this good. This claim that you've made is substantiated, and that it doesn't require a stamp or a seal of approval from a Vera or a gold standard. You can see that it's true because you can verify it. This is enabled by open source software, and this has to be done in balance between the global south and the global north, where we have a concentration of capital in developed markets, which have created all of the emissions, or at least a vast majority of them in the first place. And then we have all this natural capital in emerging markets who actually have the opportunity to destroy their forests if they want and burn it to reach economic development, just like we did. And we need to create a balance here where capital flows to the global south with a consciousness of justice and actually a spirit of co-creation and collaboration, because we can't recreate the colonial mistakes of our past. And so what I like to do when I'm talking about ReFi is really break it into 3 key parts. We have at the base layer planet positive actions. These are specific people in specific places planting trees or preventing them from being cut down, creating regenerative farms and deciding not to use chemicals, of preserving a specific plot of land for wildlife and just leaving it alone, leaving our oceans alone and letting them restore. And there's also the social element of local businesses and the work and the good that we can do just by creating meaningful vocation for many. So this is the kind of behavior layer, the planet positive layer, that we can measure and we can report and verify is happening through a number of data sources. There's people on the ground taking photos and videos, taking field samples of soil and DNA in the water. And then we have remote sensors, things like CO2 sticks or audio recording devices or LiDAR sensors. And then we also have this last level of fidelity around satellite imagery that we can catch through Sentinel sensors every 5 days even, and a range of other things from atmospheric data. And this second layer is really the trust layer that is effectively broken in the current market today. And this layer is a massive opportunity for many businesses around the world to come in and take an otherwise antiquated system and make it more effective and efficient and create a higher system of trust so that corporates and nations can deploy more capital into these planet positive behaviors because they know it's happening. They can see the data. And really the on-chain, the public ledger part of this is essential because we now have, through the likes of Ethereum and other proof of stake blockchains, very energy efficient software that is effectively a decentralized database that we can present this information and allow people to buy this stuff, to buy these credits, and to pay people for doing these actions. Specific examples, I think, are really helpful to talk about, okay, what is ReFi and how is it working? This is my friend David DAO. Yes, his name is actually David DAO. He's not running a DAO, though. He's running a company called Gainforest. He's been working for over 5 years now as a PhD candidate in Zurich, and he's pioneered this digital measurement and reporting and verification with satellite, drones, and field monitors. Specifically in South and Central America, they've got teams of people with phones on the ground. They've got drones taking footage of specific forest areas and satellites to verify if an area is being cut down. And they can draw a specific polygon on the earth and say, alert me if deforestation happens, and know it's happening within 5 days. They can also draw polygons around any plot of land that Vera or other carbon registries have said is being protected. And we can see, is it actually? And so this technology is really important as a kind of base data layer. As an extension of this, what can you actually do with it once you have the data of the health of your forest and the health of your coral reef and the vibrancy of your local economy? My friend Luke at Collectivo is building an incredible project in a small island state called Curaçao, just north of Venezuela. And what they've done is they've actually built a mobile app as an extension of the Cello wallet Valora, which allows for a local community to use a currency that is pegged to the local currency called Gilder. So it's the same value of what they normally exchange with. But instead of being backed by petrochemicals, effectively, of what most central banks invest in and other assets, it's backed by the health of their forests and the vibrancy of the land and the productivity of this local community. And so it's actually being used, this crypto is being used every single day by hundreds of people for real goods and real services. You can go to a bar, you can go to different grocery stores and actually pay for normal everyday stuff with K Gilder. And so I think this really shows where the rubber meets the road with this opportunity of ReFi. This is real people in a real place using a real currency backed by the health of nature to pay for real goods and services. And this is really kind of the holy grail. We've also got the folks at Kumo DAO who are pioneering a natural capital backed currency called KUSD. And if you know the stablecoin market, if you've seen any of the USDC drama or USDT or even others before that, we can see that these stable assets have huge potential. And what they're looking at doing is, instead of just having a currency backed by nature available for the folks in Collectivo and Curaçao, what if this was a global reserve currency that we could use to pay for anything? And we could actually earn interest on holding these stable assets because they're backed by nature and this nature is growing in value. And so I think this really has huge potential. If anyone's read Ministry for the Future, this is definitely in that territory. And I think, has a likelihood for great success. But I've just shown really 3 examples today. If you go to our website, refidao.com, you can see hundreds and hundreds of people in our database. There's probably about 3,000 in ReFi, and we maybe have about a third of them. We've got over 600 projects at the intersection of impact and Web3, and over $250 million has been deployed in venture capital. And you can see what the deals are and what they've been done. It's kind of slowed down of late, as it has done across the rest of the VC market, but there's really exciting movement in the ReFi space. And I've been very grateful to be a part of this from early days in my time at Toucan as well, and kind of seeing the challenges of building these tools and making sure that the money is going to, the land stewards and the landowners, as opposed to just intermediaries like brokers in the middle. So as a segue to the next section, I want to talk about this diagram, which may have been presented at other points in this conference, which is really talking about sustainability as a bridge between the degenerative business as usual, where we're destroying nature effectively and human health in order to create economic productivity, and the regenerative future that we all need to survive. And this middle ground is what would be described as sustainable. It's kind of neither degenerative nor regenerative, but we're effectively stuck here. Emissions are still rising, nature is still being destroyed, biodiversity is still depleting. And what we need to do is really invest in trust and create financial mechanisms and technologies and communities that can get capital to flow out of this degenerative space into a regenerative space within the next 5 to 7 years, as the IPCC report states. And so it's with this framing that we introduce the concept of ReFi DAO. We see ourselves as what we call a network state to regenerate the earth. I can unpack this term in a second. But I think the key concept here is that our current organizational structures are broken. Nation states and corporations have effectively proven that they cannot solve these global coordination challenges of climate change, biodiversity collapse, social injustice, because the incentive and the governance structures are fundamentally flawed. The quarterly corporate shareholder model and the short-term election cycles with shareholder-owned media corporations creates a really perverse system that really nobody trusts anymore. And so the powerful and amazing thing is, despite this breakdown in trust in our institutions, we actually have a global consensus through the Paris targets that were set forth in 2015. All the nations of the world have decided, okay, we need to really learn how to value what matters for people and for planetary health. And this economic transition that we're seeing is many times the size of the US annual economy. There's a recent McKinsey report that shows, there will be $12 trillion spent per year by 2030 to try and reach the 50% emissions reduction set forth by the Paris targets. And we're looking at over 240 trillion by 2050. And really what's blocking this, keeping us in a degenerative economic state, is trust. And so we see these tools, as we described earlier, as the kind of key primitives to unlock trillions of dollars of capital all across our entire economy, not just carbon management, accounting, utilization, reduction, capture, but also manufacturing, transportation, energy. Everything needs to be redesigned with regeneration at heart. And so, yes, this is a massive economic opportunity. Yes, people will probably see trillion-dollar companies, or trillionaires, made through this transition. But it's not actually about the money for me, or at least it's not what it is personally. I think this is actually a fundamental opportunity to redesign what it means to be human and to redesign society from a completely different place. And I think we're seeing this emergence of a new society through ReFi, as we have hundreds of founders all over the world gathering online with a shared vision of the future that says, we're not separate. We need to invest in nature. We need to protect this for generations to come. We've reached a decent size of audience and have held now well over 27 events across 24 countries and reaching thousands of people in person in key communities all over the world. And our key hypothesis right now is, in order to really unlock a regenerative economy, we've actually got to take root in local startup communities all over the world, each having their own token, their own treasury, and their own vision of regeneration to take these tools and put them to use without needing permission from anyone, just saying, let's go out there and buy land, let's go do this. And so our vision for a network state at ReFi DAO is really seeing a network of local startup cities all over the world, each with their own impact DAO, focused on the vision of regeneration. And each would have their own token, their own treasury, but they'd be connected to this massive global online community. And we'd be able to gather once a year, a kind of Davos for ReFi in Lisbon. There'd be a digital passport that would manage identity and reputation. We'd be able to run an on-chain census and see how many people strong are we. We can introduce a global currency to facilitate effective governance that really honors the local sovereignty of these places. And I know this might sound a little bit crazy, but I think there's actually a strong need for an entity like this that really is the regenerative economy of the future to gain diplomatic recognition at COP and to show the nations and corporations, this is how it works. We're not an adversary to the current system. We're an accelerant. We want to create economic sandboxes that can show this is how you deploy capital to protect nature and do it with trust in an effective way that creates jobs for local communities. So here's a bit of a strategic roadmap at a high level of the places that we're seeing emerge. This is a structured incubator program that we've just announced. You can now apply to become a first local ReFi DAO node. We're going to do Lisbon first, and then we're going to incubate one in the Global South as a sister. And so I would even invite each of you to just wonder, what would you do with $1 million with you and a bunch of other founders in your city? your local government, your NGOs, your startup ecosystem together, each being co-creators in a regenerative future, what land would you buy? What capital would you allocate? And how could you engage land stewards as a part of this as co-creators? So this is the final part, the invitation. I know I'm a little bit over time here, but we lost a few minutes from the Wi-Fi. So we have a prize now. You can check us out on Twitter. There's a link here. I can send the deck afterwards. And we're helping people all over the world raise funds to create little local ReFi DAO nodes in cities like Lisbon, in Toronto, all over the place, to see regeneration come from the grassroots and no longer wait for nations and corporations to do their part, but rather become a key partner and ally and say, hey, we have a hypothesis about how we can make this work. And the really exciting thing is that behind this entire network is a massive graph of knowledge. We're mapping the entire regenerative and sustainability ecosystem in Lisbon and building this into a public database that anybody can access. This is also happening in Paris, in Nairobi, in Bogota, and San Francisco. We're seeing these startup ecosystems gather data about where to deploy capital for impact and using AI to gain contextual insights about the best places for leverage. If you're interested in participating, we have monthly meetups on the third Thursday of every month in Lisbon. We're going to have our annual meeting in November 2023. You can scan this QR code and join our event in April if you'd like. But more importantly, we don't want people flying around the world. Go to a startup city near you. There's a big list of events at refidao.com/community/events. You can scan this QR code. And if there isn't an event in your community, we have an event grant budget that we can support up to $1,000 to gather the top public, private, and third sector institutions to talk about what regeneration in your city would look like. And we're looking really for founders to lead this. So this is our vision of regeneration at ReFi DAO. We think founders are the key, and we're super grateful to be able to share a little bit with you. Thanks for your patience during the Wi-Fi hiccups. I know that probably wasn't smooth for lots, but I appreciate the opportunity to share.